Venice Beach, California. April 16, 1968. 2:45 p.m. The afternoon sun poured through the plate glass windows of Gold's Gym, casting long shadows across rows of iron plates and chrome barbells. The air was thick, sweat, chalk dust, and the metallic tang of steel mingled with the rhythmic clang of weights hitting the floor. This wasn't just any gym. This was the Cathedral of Muscle, the birthplace of modern bodybuilding, where men came to build bodies that looked like they were carved from granite. Outside, the California beach stretched endlessly, golden sand meeting the Pacific. But inside Gold's Gym, there was no room for sunshine and leisure. This was a temple of pain, of discipline, of the American dream forged in iron. Arnold Schwarzenegger trained here. Franco Columbu. Dave Draper. Legends whose biceps measured bigger than most men's thighs, whose shoulders looked like bowling balls wrapped in skin. And on this particular Tuesday afternoon, the gym was packed. 30, maybe 40 men, all massive, all dedicated to the religion of size. Grunts echoed off the cinderblock walls. The smell of ammonia from smelling salts cut through the thick air. In the corner, a man loaded a barbell with plate after plate, 45 stacked like dinner plates, the bar bending slightly under the weight. Then the door opened. A figure stepped inside. Small. Compact. Maybe 5'7", weighing no more than 135 pounds. He wore simple black pants and a tight-fitting shirt that revealed a lean, sinewy frame, muscles that looked like twisted steel cables rather than the bulging masses that surrounded him. His movements were fluid, almost cat-like, as he walked past the rows of benches and squat racks. Bruce Lee had arrived. Before we go any further into what happened next, into one of the most legendary 8 seconds in martial arts history, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Because stories like this, real encounters that changed how we think about strength, speed, and fighting, don't get told enough. And if you're someone who wants to know what really happens when movie myths meet reality, you need to be here for every single episode. Bruce wasn't a regular at Gold's Gym, but he wasn't a stranger either. In 1968, he was still building his reputation in Hollywood, teaching martial arts to actors, stuntmen, and anyone willing to learn. He'd trained Steve McQueen, James Coburn, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. His one-inch punch had become the stuff of legend among those who'd witnessed it. But here, in the heart of bodybuilding culture, Bruce Lee was an outsider. A curiosity. A man whose entire body weight was less than what some of these men could bench press for a warm-up. The year 1968 was the golden age of American bodybuilding. It was the year Arnold Schwarzenegger won his first Mr. Universe title. It was the year muscles became mainstream, when size wasn't just admired, it was worshipped. Bigger meant better. Stronger meant tougher. The concept was simple: if you could lift more weight, you could beat anyone in a fight. Mass equaled dominance. That was the code. And Bruce Lee, walking through that gym with his lean 135 frame, was the antithesis of everything Gold's Gym represented. He didn't head for the squat rack or the bench press. Instead, he found an open space near the back, dropped to the floor, and began doing one-arm push-ups. Not the sloppy kind where your hips sag and your form collapses. Perfect one-arm push-ups. His body remained rigid as a plank, moving up and down with mechanical precision. One arm behind his back. The other bearing the full load. His breathing was controlled, rhythmic. Up, down, up, down. A few guys glanced over. Then a few more. One-arm push-ups weren't common, even here. But it was the way Bruce did them, the control, the stillness, the absolute lack of wasted motion, that made people stop and stare. Near the far wall, a man named Dave was finishing his third set of bench presses. Dave wasn't his real name. His identity has been debated over the years, lost somewhere between gym legend and verified history, but for our purposes, we'll call him Dave. And Dave was a powerlifter. Not a bodybuilder focused on aesthetics, but a pure strength athlete. 350 pounds of solid mass. His chest was a barrel. His arms were thick as most men's legs. His hands looked like they could crush cinder blocks. He had just finished pressing 500 pounds. 500 pounds. 10 reps, the bar had bent under the weight, the plates rattling as he slammed it back onto the rack with a thunderous clang that echoed through the gym. Dave sat up, wiping the sweat from his forehead with a towel the size of a beach blanket. His breathing was heavy, his face flushed. He took a long drink from a water bottle, then stood, 6'3" of raw power, his shadow swallowing the smaller men around him. That's when he noticed Bruce. Still doing one-arm push-ups. Still moving with that eerie, mechanical precision. Dave watched for a moment, then let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't cruel, exactly. It was the kind of laugh that comes from disbelief, from seeing something so out of place it almost seemed funny. "Hey," Dave called out, his voice deep and booming, cutting through the noise of the gym. "Nice little workout you got there, buddy." A few guys nearby chuckled. Bruce didn't respond. He finished his set, 30 reps, then switched arms and started again. Dave walked over, his footsteps heavy on the rubber gym floor. He stood a few feet away, arms crossed over his massive chest, watching Bruce with a mix of amusement and curiosity. "You do martial arts, right?" Dave asked. "I've seen you in here before. You're that guy who teaches actors how to fake fight for the movies." Bruce finished his set, then rose to his feet in one smooth motion. He turned to face Dave, his expression calm, neutral. No anger. No defensiveness. Just quiet observation. "I teach martial arts," Bruce said simply. His voice was clear, precise, with a slight accent that carried the cadence of Hong Kong English. Dave nodded, still smiling. "That's cool, man. Real cool. But let me ask you something." He stepped closer, and the size difference became even more pronounced. Dave's chest was at Bruce's eye level. "All that speed, all those fancy moves, you really think that's gonna help you in a real fight? Against a guy like me?" The gym had started to go quiet. Conversation stopped. Weights stopped clanging. Guys turned to watch. Dave wasn't being malicious. He genuinely believed what he was saying. In his world, strength was everything. He could deadlift 700 pounds. He could bench press 500. He had fought in bar brawls and come out on top simply because no one could move him. To Dave, the equation was simple: mass plus power equals victory. "You think those little muscles are gonna save you when someone my size throws a real punch?" Dave continued. He wasn't yelling. He was just talking, the way someone might explain a basic fact. "Look, I respect what you do. It's impressive for movies. But in the real world? Muscle beats speed. Every time." Bruce tilted his head slightly, studying Dave the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. There was no anger in his eyes. No ego. Just curiosity. "You believe that," Bruce said. It wasn't a question. "I know that," Dave replied. "I've been in enough fights to know. Size wins. Strength wins." Bruce was silent for a moment, then he smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Would you like to test that theory?" Dave blinked. "What?" "Throw a punch at me," Bruce said calmly. "Your best punch. As hard as you can. Let's see if muscle really does beat speed." The gym went completely silent. Dave stared at Bruce, trying to figure out if this small man was serious. Around them, the gym had transformed into an arena. Guys stepped back, forming a loose circle. Someone set down their barbell mid-rep, another man paused halfway through a bicep curl, arm frozen at 90 degrees, eyes locked on the confrontation. "You want me to hit you?" Dave asked, his brow furrowed. "I want you to try," Bruce clarified. "Throw your best punch. Don't hold back. Treat it like a real fight." Dave looked around at the gathering crowd, then back at Bruce. He wasn't a bully. He didn't go around picking fights with smaller guys. But he also wasn't about to back down in front of everyone. And besides, he was curious. He'd heard stories about Bruce Lee, the one-inch punch, the speed, the precision, but stories were just stories. This was real life. "All right," Dave said slowly. "But I don't want to hurt you, man." Bruce's smile widened slightly. "You won't." Dave took a step back, giving himself space. He rolled his massive shoulders, cracked his knuckles, each pop sounding like a small firecracker. His hands were enormous, each fist the size of a softball. When he clenched them, the muscles in his forearms bunched up like pythons coiling to strike. Bruce stood relaxed, hands at his sides, weight balanced evenly on both feet. He didn't take a fighting stance. Didn't raise his guard. He just stood there, watching Dave with those calm, analytical eyes. "You ready?" Dave asked. Bruce nodded once. Dave took a breath, set his feet, and threw a punch. It wasn't a wild haymaker. Despite his size, Dave had some training, boxing basics learned in backyard fights and rough neighborhoods. He stepped forward with his right leg, rotated his hips, and drove his right fist straight at Bruce's face. It was a textbook cross, thrown with every ounce of his 350-pound frame behind it. The kind of punch that could break a jaw, collapse a nose, knock a man unconscious before he hit the ground. The punch cut through the air with a sound like a whip crack. And Bruce wasn't there. He had moved, not backward, not to the side in any obvious way, but somehow he was simply not in the path of that massive fist. Dave's punch sailed past Bruce's head, missing by less than 2 inches. Dave felt the rush of displaced air, felt the momentum of his own body carrying him forward, slightly off balance. And then Bruce moved. What happened next took 8 seconds. But to everyone watching, it looked like a single blur of motion. Bruce's left hand snapped out, fingers extended, and struck Dave's extended right arm just above the elbow. The strike was precise, targeted, hitting a pressure point with surgical accuracy. Dave felt a sudden, electric jolt shoot down his arm, as if someone had jabbed a live wire into his muscle. Before Dave could even register what had happened, Bruce's right hand shot forward, not a punch, but an open palm strike, slamming into Dave's solar plexus. Not hard enough to cause damage, but hard enough to interrupt his breathing. Dave's diaphragm spasmed. Air rushed out of his lungs. Bruce moved again. His left foot swept low, hooking behind Dave's right ankle while simultaneously his palm pressed against Dave's chest. It wasn't a hard push. It was placement. Leverage. Timing. Dave's massive body tilted backward. Then Bruce's fingers struck again, this time to the inside of Dave's right arm, near the shoulder, hitting another nerve cluster. Dave's entire arm went numb. Not weak. Not tired. Completely numb, as if someone had unplugged it from his nervous system. The barbell grip Dave had used to press 500 pounds minutes ago, gone. His fingers opened involuntarily. His arm dropped, heavy and useless, hanging at his side. Bruce's right hand flashed out one more time, striking Dave's left arm in a similar spot. Another nerve cluster. Another electric jolt. Dave's left arm went dead. And then, with both of Dave's arms hanging useless at his sides, Bruce placed one hand on Dave's chest and guided him, almost gently, down to one knee. 8 seconds. From the moment Bruce moved to the moment Dave was kneeling on the gym floor, both arms numb, chest heaving, trying desperately to suck air back into his lungs. 8 seconds. The gym was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. They just stared. Dave knelt there, eyes wide, looking up at Bruce with an expression somewhere between shock and disbelief. He tried to lift his right arm. It wouldn't respond. He tried to make a fist. His fingers wouldn't close. He could see his arms. He knew they were there. But he couldn't feel them. Couldn't move them. What? Dave gasped, still trying to breathe. What did you do? Bruce crouched down so he was at eye level with Dave. His expression was calm, almost kind. There was no triumph in his eyes. No arrogance. Just the quiet confidence of someone who had proven a point. Pressure points, Bruce said softly. Nerve clusters. Your body is controlled by electrical signals from your brain to your muscles. Disrupt those signals, and size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. He tapped Dave's shoulder lightly. You have all the muscle in the world. But if I cut the connection between your brain and that muscle, it's useless. Dave stared at him, still struggling to process what had just happened. He'd been in fights. He'd been hit before. But he'd never experienced anything like this, the complete loss of control, the terrifying realization that his body wasn't responding to his commands. Around them, the gym remained frozen. No one knew what to say. A few guys exchanged glances. One man shook his head slowly, as if trying to wake himself from a dream. Bruce stood and extended his hand. Can you stand? Dave nodded slowly. He took Bruce's hand, or rather, Bruce took his limp hand and helped him to his feet. Dave swayed slightly, his legs still working but his balance thrown off by the dead weight of his arms. Give it a minute, Bruce said. The sensation will return. And slowly, it did. Pins and needles first, like when your foot falls asleep. Then a tingling warmth spreading down from his shoulders to his fingertips. Dave flexed his fingers experimentally. They moved. He rotated his wrist. Function was returning. He looked down at Bruce, still had to look down, because Bruce was still 8 inches shorter, but something had changed. The size difference no longer seemed to matter. "How did you?" Dave started, then stopped. He didn't even know what question to ask. If you're watching this and your mind is completely blown right now, do me a favor, hit that like button and drop a comment. Tell me, do you think raw power can beat technique, or does knowledge always win? Comment power or technique and tell me why. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're breaking down real martial arts encounters, not Hollywood myths. Bruce gestured to one of the nearby benches. "Sit. I'll explain." Dave sat, still flexing his hands, marveling at the fact that they were working again. Bruce remained standing, and now the rest of the gym slowly began to close in, forming a semicircle around them. No one wanted to miss this. "You can bench press 500 pounds, Bruce began. "That's impressive. That takes years of training, discipline, and dedication. I respect that." He paused. "But strength without knowledge is incomplete. You threw a punch with all your power, all your mass behind it. And in a street fight against most people, that punch would end the fight. One hit. They'd go down and stay down." Dave nodded slowly. That's exactly what he'd believed. "But," Bruce continued, "your punch takes time. It has to travel a distance. And in that time, less than a second, I can see it coming. I can move. And I can strike you 3, 4, 5 times before your punch even reaches where I was standing." Bruce stepped forward, his movements unhurried, deliberate. He extended his right arm slowly, miming the punch Dave had thrown minutes earlier. "When you punch," Bruce said, "you commit your entire body. You rotate your hips, shift your weight forward, extend your arm. All of that creates power. But it also creates predictability. I don't need to block your punch. I don't need to match your strength. I just need to not be where your fist is going." He moved his head slightly to the side, demonstrating the minimal motion he'd used to evade Dave's punch. 2 inches. That's all I moved. 2 inches, and your punch misses completely. And in that moment, when your body is committed, when your weight is forward, when you're off balance, you're vulnerable. Bruce pointed to his own arm. The human nervous system is a network. Electrical signals run from your brain, down your spinal cord, through nerve pathways to your muscles. Those pathways have specific points where they're close to the surface, where they're exposed. He touched a spot on his own arm, just above the elbow. "Right here. This is the radial nerve. Strike it correctly, and you interrupt the signal. The muscle stops receiving commands." Dave was listening intently now, his earlier embarrassment replaced by genuine fascination. "Your arm weighs maybe 40 pounds, Bruce continued. "You can lift 400, 500 pounds with it. But when the nerve signal is interrupted, you can't lift anything. Not because the muscle is damaged. Not because you're weak. But because the connection is temporarily severed." He snapped his fingers. "Cut the wire, and the light doesn't turn on. It doesn't matter how bright the bulb is." One of the other guys in the gym, a bodybuilder named Frank with arms like tree trunks, spoke up. "So you're saying technique beats strength? Every time?" Bruce turned to him. "I'm saying technique multiplies strength. Speed multiplies power." He gestured to Dave. "Dave is strong. Incredibly strong. But if I can strike 5 times in the time it takes him to strike once, who has the advantage?" Frank didn't answer, but his expression said enough. "Let me show you something else," Bruce said. He walked over to a heavy bag hanging in the corner, one of those thick, densely packed bags used for power training. He stood in front of it, then positioned himself so that his fist was barely 1 inch away from the surface of the bag. "Most people think power comes from distance," Bruce explained. "The longer the punch, the more acceleration, the more force. That's partially true. But it's not the only way." He looked around at the gathered crowd. "Power equals mass times acceleration. Force equals mass times acceleration squared. You all know this from physics, even if you don't remember the equations." He tapped the heavy bag lightly with his fist. "Dave has mass. A lot of it. But acceleration, speed, is more important than people realize. Because acceleration is squared in the force equation. Double your speed, and you quadruple your force." Bruce set his feet, brought his fist back to exactly 1 inch from the bag, took a breath, and struck. The heavy bag, easily 200 pounds, jumped backward violently, swinging on its chain with a loud, metallic screech. The impact echoed through the gym like a gunshot. The bag swung back and forth, and when it settled, there was a visible indentation where Bruce's fist had connected. From 1 inch. The gym erupted in murmurs. Guys looked at each other, eyebrows raised, heads shaking in disbelief. "That's impossible," someone muttered. "I just watched him do it," another replied. Bruce turned back to Dave, who was now standing again, his arms fully functional, his expression completely changed. The cockiness was gone. The dismissive smile had vanished. In its place was respect. Curiosity. The look of someone who just had their entire worldview challenged and found it wanting. "You asked if my little muscles would save me in a real fight," Bruce said. "The answer is, it's not about the size of the muscle. It's about how you use it. It's about knowledge. About understanding the body, your body and your opponent's body. About speed. About precision." He paused, letting the words sink in. In a real fight, not in a ring, not with rules, not with a referee, size can be an advantage. But it can also be a disadvantage. A bigger man is a slower man. A stronger man often relies on strength and forgets about speed. And speed, combined with knowledge, will beat size almost every time. Dave was nodding now, slowly, as if pieces were clicking into place in his mind. "I don't say this to disrespect what you do," Bruce continued. "Powerlifting, bodybuilding, these take incredible dedication. But fighting is different. Fighting is about efficiency. About ending the confrontation as quickly as possible with the least amount of energy. You can punch with all your power, or I can strike a nerve and make your arm useless. Which is more efficient?" The answer was obvious. Bruce glanced around the gym, making eye contact with several of the men watching. "Most of you train to look strong. Some of you train to be strong. But how many of you train to be effective?" Silence. Effectiveness isn't about how much you can lift. It's about whether your technique works when it needs to. When you're tired. When you're hurt. When your opponent is bigger, stronger, faster. Can you still fight? Can you still win? He turned back to Dave. "You relied on your size. On your strength. And for 99 out of 100 opponents, that would be enough. But what about the one who knows what I know? The one who can move like I move?" Dave met his eyes. "I'd lose." Bruce nodded. "Yes. But now you know. And knowledge is the beginning of improvement." There was a long pause. The gym was still quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now, not shock, but contemplation. Guys were thinking. Processing. Reevaluating. Then Dave did something unexpected. He extended his hand. "Would you teach me?" Bruce looked at the hand, then at Dave's face. The humility there was genuine. The arrogance had been replaced by the kind of openness that only comes from having your assumptions shattered. Bruce shook his hand. "Come to my school. I'll show you what real fighting looks like. Not movie fighting. Not sport fighting. Real combat." Dave nodded. "I'll be there." Bruce smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. "Good. Because you have strength. Now you need to learn how to use it." And with that, Bruce turned and walked toward the door. The crowd parted for him, guys stepping aside, watching him go with a mix of awe and respect. The small man who had just dismantled a 350-pound powerlifter in 8 seconds without breaking a sweat. As the door closed behind him, the gym slowly came back to life. But the conversations had changed. Guys weren't talking about bench press numbers or squat maxes. They were talking about speed. About technique. About Bruce Lee. And Dave sat back down on the bench, staring at his hands, flexing his fingers, marveling at how easily they'd been taken away from him and given back. He would show up at Bruce Lee's school the following week. He would train. He would learn. And years later, he would tell this story to anyone who would listen, not with embarrassment, but with gratitude. Because on that day at Gold's Gym, he learned the most important lesson of his life. Being strong isn't the same as being effective. Having muscle isn't the same as having skill. And in a real fight, knowledge and speed will always beat raw power. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is built for, someone who wants the truth, not the fantasy. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the next video breaks down another legendary Bruce Lee encounter that will completely change how you see martial arts. And drop a comment right now, who would you want to see Bruce Lee face off against next? Tell me below. See you in the next story.